This documentary follows the 35's, a pressure group who campaigned for the rights of Soviet Jews who had been imprisoned for requesting an exit visa between the 1970s and the 1990s. It is their 40th anniversary this year, so we went to London to visit some of the sites where they protested and to meet and interview former chairman of the 35's, Rita Rika.
We're here on May Day in Trafalgar Square. It is 40 years ago to the day that the Women's Campaign for Soviet Jewry, known as the 35's, was formed and held their first demonstration. Although Trafalgar Square was an important location for the 35's, the main body of their campaigning was held at Westminster. A significant part of the campaign of the 35's consisted in writing letters to MPs about the dire situation of the Jews in the Soviet Union and asking them to pressurise the Soviet government. A large number of MPs responded positively, and some, such as David Renton, even participated in some campaigns.
My name is Rita Rika, and I became co-chair of the Women's Campaign for 35's when the original chair went to live in Israel. It was very much a change of the way things were running. In the early days we were campaigning to get the Jews out of Russia, and then thousands of them ended up in Israel. So we decided that we should do something to try and ease the burden there. So we set up groups in Israel whereby they met the new immigrants, they tried to teach them their rights, and so it grew from there. And from being an activist, one almost becomes a semi-pacifist and becoming a fundraiser. From beginning to our career of standing on the streets and demonstrating, we've become much more ladylike, sit behind desks, and now start begging and pleading for funds to keep the projects going. The 35's were really a campaign group that grew. We also started off with very small numbers. We started in London because we'd read about a 35-year-old librarian being imprisoned for her desire to go to Israel. And one of my friends said, we have to do something. And out of that wanting to do something, a group of us, we were all in our early 20s, all had little ones at nursery school. I said, well, what do we do? None of us had ever been involved in the campaign other than when we were all students. So we decided that we'd have demonstrations and that we would all wear black. We had our first demonstration and the press came because it was an unusual occurrence in those days for ladies to hold a demonstration. And they said, well, what do you call yourselves? And we said, well, we don't. And we told them the story of why we were there, and they said, well, you're the 35's. And that's how we got our name. Many of our relatives didn't approve of what we were doing, least of all your mother-in-law. She was aghast that this is what her son's wife could be doing, standing on the streets, holding a banner which was made up from a sheet off the bed and with black boot polish for the word, doing the wording. This is how immature we were and how we really didn't know too much. But, when you get the confidence and you realise what you're doing is right, then somehow you get the tools and people join you, and we ended up having groups throughout the world: Canada, America, Brussels, Luxembourg, Switzerland, and all the provincial towns in England. 35 groups just mushroomed, and it was amazing. And there's been some wonderful highlights. I mean, it hasn't all been gloom and despair. In fact, many of our demonstrations were assisted by the police. They used to come and help us. They'd look at their watches and say, come along girls, you're late. And then we heard about Sharansky, Natan Sharansky, and he became a symbol. And we had his wife come over, and we went to, we met Margaret Thatcher, who was really sympathetic and really a wonderful lady. And we met with MPs, and the House of Commons, the House of Lords. We had a huge network of friends, including the Foreign Office. And we had various people who would tell us when the Soviet delegation was coming. And we had constant contact with through a Mr. Michael Sherborne, who was a fluent Russian speaker. He used to phone the Soviet Union and bring us up, keep us up to date with everything that was happening. And particularly when Sharansky went on trial, his brother was able to speak to Michael, and therefore we knew exactly what we were doing and what we had to do and the tactics that we had to use. The establishment wanted us to be quiet and do things very quietly and diplomatically. We maintained that if it didn't hurt the Russian Jews, that what we were doing and highlighting their case, then we continued. And yes, we were frowned upon by the establishment very much. I think, for appearance sake, it looks as if it's changed. But I know from reports that we get that anti-Semitism is still rife, that the KGB are the same as before with a smile on their faces. And quite honestly, I just don't trust them. But I think that if you believe in something really deeply and want to do something, then do it. You're not, as long as you're not hurting people and you're not smashing up properties. If you can do it in a dignified but in a way that you get your message across, then go ahead and do it. I mean, I'm all for it. I don't approve of demonstrations that, deliberately set out to smash up buildings and have a fight with people, but there are ways of doing it. There's a right way and a wrong way, and if you go about it the right way, then I think you get the support of people passing you by, as opposed to getting the boos and getting the police involved.
After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the primary aim of the 35's was achieved, in that all Russian Jews were free to emigrate. However, this did not stop them campaigning for the rights of Jews worldwide, and they are now part of the Israel one-to-one focus group, who promote solidarity between Israelis and Palestinians.
In Rita's words, anti-Semitism in Russia is still rife. Authority bears the same face today as it did then, just behind false smiles. Despite this, the 35's helped aid the integration of 1 million Jews from 1971 to 1996, and they assisted in the international refuseniks effort. They were often faced with resistance, whether it was from more traditional members of society, from the Soviet and British governments, or even from their own family members. In some ways, the criticism they received fueled them because of how much it incensed them, but they were never violent. Perhaps protesters of today could learn something from the resolve and dedication of the 35's.